Closing checklist. No, actually, Lisa helped me answer a lot of questions because she was so
Yeah.
kind to stop by and like, check on my closing checklist. But I think I was just kind of curious, like, when do I start bothering the seller side to give me their disclosures, even though they gave me a due date of the 18th? Like, do I
The
start?
due date of the 18th.
Mhm.
Is that in the contract?
Yes, in the escrow, but then like
Not the escrow, in the contract, in the purchase agreement?
the purchase agreement?
Yeah, because the purchase agreement states when the seller has to give you all of those disclosures. Escrow does nothing other than take orders from the buyer and seller. And those orders are in that purchase agreement. So if you look on the disclosure page, it'll say within so many days, the seller will deliver to the buyer all of the disclosures.
Let me
Should be
double
on
check.
that page 2 or 3. Hi, welcome. How you doing? When all the contingencies are listed,
Page 2 or 3, right? Where the
of the,
contingency.
of the purchase agreement.
17 days is, I think we just did the standard. Or,
Yeah.
let me bring it to you.
You almost have to log put a transaction together anymore.
Review of seller's documents. So the buyer has 17 days or 5 days after receipt, but there should be one here for the seller delivery of documents.
Oh, I see. 7 days after acceptance.
Right.
So they have till Monday for me because it was accepted on the beginning of this week on Monday. So 7 days, 1 week later will be the coming Monday.
Right.
Okay. I'll just have to, I guess, patiently wait for them.
Yeah. So hopefully if you've got a relation, do they have a TC or?
They do, yeah.
Well, just say, hey, I know that the contract says we're gonna have those on Monday. Is there a chance of getting in sooner than that? I mean, you want to develop a rapport with either the agent, if the agent's doing the paperwork, or the TC, so that it's not like, oh, contract says Monday,
Yeah.
it'll be Monday, you know, type of thing. So that's what I would call her if it's if the TC is a lady and say, hey, I notice we're supposed to have these by Monday. How are they going?
Okay, just check in with her. Because today's Thursday, so they technically have like 2 more business days after.
Yeah, it's calendar days. It's not.
Oh, it's calendar is not business days.
Yeah, the only thing that's business days is that. The only business days is that deposit. Every time frame in the contract are calendar days. And if you remember that deposit, the earnest money deposit, it says 3 business days. So
Yeah, we took care of that one. So we made sure the wire went through successfully.
Yeah.
So one thing off the checklist.
so everything else is calendar days. The little niche to that is if the deadline falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or a weekend, and it pushes off to the next business day. So still calendar days, but for example, if you have a 17-day condition, Saturday, well, you gotta wait till Monday. Holiday, too. Or if it's a holiday.
Holiday.
Yeah, and that's all defined. And one of the last pages there where it has all the definitions of days and expirations.
I do remember seeing that.
Yeah, so what Danny taught me when he came on board to help me years ago, that when it's in a normal market, not today's market, but in a normal market, you keep that 17-day contingency period, because that's usually what a lot of buyers need to get an appraisal and get their loan approved. And so what most agents do is day 17 comes and they haven't received that contingency removal form signed. That's what you're looking for. that box, I think it's box 3 or box C, where it says that the buyer is removing all conditions. And in bold print, it says that the earnest money deposit can now, is now in jeopardy if the buyer backs out.
Mhm.
So that's an important form to get that signed. That's due on whatever the contract says.
Mhm.
But what most agents do is they wait, day 17 comes up, they don't get it. Day 18, they call the other agent, and say, hey, what's going on? Everybody wants it to close and move forward. Oh, well, yeah, the buyer's this and this and this. And then you tell your seller's thinking, well, gee, it says 17 days, because they think it's like hard and fast. Now I can get the deposit.
Mhm.
And it's like, no, you gotta educate your clients that, no. Contract says is when the timeframes are up, or actually what Danny taught me is 2 days prior, you give notice. And then the seller has the right to cancel. The seller doesn't have the right to keep the deposit. The seller only has the right to keep the deposit if they sign that CR form. If they're not signing it. So what the good agents should do is on day 15 is you send that notice to perform to the buyer and says, hey, we want this contingency removal within 2 days as stated in the purchase agreement. Then your seller has the right to actually cancel on that 17th day, midnight, on the 18th day, if the paperwork doesn't come out. Doesn't mean that the seller wants to cancel, but it's our duty as the agent, we're like the ringleader, and we are supposed to keep everybody within the time frames. So when you go past that 17 days, and you're now on day 18, right, you're out of contract because the buyers were supposed to do something, right? So that means you have to do that notice to perform if you haven't done it previously. And then the sellers have the right to, just float along if they want, which some sellers do. But what the veteran and the professional agents do is they work it out. They say, okay, we're past the 17 days. You want to give them another week? Right, then let's do an extension. You use that EXT form, that extension time form, and say, hey, we're extending the contingency period from such and such date to this date. And then you can also extend escrow. Sometimes it's just, but you should always work the extension so you're always within your time. Not tell the seller that 17 days have come and passed, because the seller, it's a 30-day escrow. They've already contracted with removers. They're ready to move, right? They're going to get very upset at you and TRG if this doesn't close on time, right? So you got to keep them informed of what their options are.
We're gonna sign a residential lease after sale with us for 6 months, so hopefully we do meet all the deadlines.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so you have that, and were you able to find the lender that's willing to lend with them?
Yeah,
Okay.
we disclosed everything as you recommended, so we're not
Good.
gonna hide anything. We told them straight up like what's happening.
Yep.
So what rate they give us is whatever they do.
Thank you for reminding me on that. So, in the old days, Keith and I, we used to do stuff outside of escrow.
So now it's considered now is like a normal market, right? Because before, when they have everybody racing to buy for the buyer, there's no what do you call the appraisal, no, nothing required.
Well, to answer your question, I think we're getting into a more normal market.
Right, okay.
It's still, there's still multiple offers that agents are seeing and properties are priced right. There's still more buyers out there than there are sellers. So now it's sellers. with interest rates doubling from
Yeah.
3 to 6%, it's definitely slowed down. So,
And then they're required to be appraised, the property.
properties have always been required to be
No, because at
appraised.
that time, everybody, that couple months ago, when everybody racing to buy the property, they say, oh, if the agency can override the appraisal, that's the person who get the house.
Right, so I still recommend that. For example, one of our agents, I was hoping she was gonna be here today. She's buying a house herself.
Mhm.
About a 1.2, I think, in that price range, but they're putting $500,000 down,
Mhm.
putting a large. And so she wrote a draft of the offer, 17 days is what the default is
Mhm.
for the loan, 17 days for the appraisal,
Okay,
and then 17 days for the inspection, right, for a 30-day escrow.
Mhm.
And this property has got multiple offers,
Mhm.
and she's coming in at full price.
Yeah,
So it's like, it ain't gonna work. Right?
Yeah.
So what we, after discussing this, and this is a good lesson for you in writing offers, it
Right.
goes to your point.
Yeah.
You remove the appraisal contingency,
okay,
because if you're buying it at 1.2 and the appraisal comes in at 1.150,
Mhm.
who cares? Right? So the buyer should not be concerned because they've been looking at properties and they like this house. Right, so the buyers have to be educated. They have to know that they're willing to buy this. I think they bumped the price up to $1,250,000 or something.
wow.
So as long as you're willing to pay that, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter what the appraiser's opinion is.
Yes, but the house is subject to inspection,
Okay, so that's the appraisal,
right?
the loan, the 17-day loan contingency,
Mhm.
right? They're only getting a loan for 600,000
Yeah.
and they're well approved
Mhm.
with that down payment. So they don't need a loan
Yeah.
contingency. So they remove that.
Right,
And so now we're down to just the inspection.
right,
How long does it take to inspect a property?
yeah, not long,
I mean, you can get an inspector out there within 3 or 4 days.
right, yeah.
Right? So what we decided is, well, how about 7 days? That's plenty of time.
Yeah, but if the inspection company available, I don't know, whoever you use,
They're available.
yeah.
Yeah, they can get out there within a couple of days if need be.
Right.
3, 4 days is no problem. So 7 days
Should be good enough.
is plenty. And so now you have an offer that's full price or a little bit over full price, a large down payment. The only contingency is 7 days for inspections. So put your seller's listing agent hat on,
Mhm.
that offer is gonna look a whole lot better than one that has 3 contingencies, 70 days for appraisal, 70 days for loan, 70
Correct.
days for inspection,
Yeah.
and it's the same price.
Mhm.
So that's how you write them, even in this market. Because she's going up against other offers, so you want to make it look as good as possible.
Right, yeah.
And that's unusual. I mean, if it's an FHA, your first time buyers, they have to get an appraisal. They
Yeah.
have to get approved for the loan.
Yeah, because this is like sometimes the houses need a lot of work, so.
That's right. That's right. And it's the first time buyers that have been pushed out of the market because they can't compete against these flippers that are
Yeah.
putting all cash or
Right.
large down payments. They just can't compete.
Yeah, I know, my next door to my house is the owner passed away. And he put in the market for million, two, and the flipper came at first, and the flipper came, and then I don't know, so it's sold, and he fixed it up, put everything new, stucco, new inside the floor and everything, and put it for $1.5 million.
And got it?
It's gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a new neighbor now,
Yeah.
$1.5 million.
Yeah. Well, we're probably not going to see too many of those, like as many as we have in the past now, because the market's we're not gonna get that 20% a year appreciation.
Yeah, oh my God, he make good money there, the flip guy.
Yeah, you
It's a
know, my
little-
wife watches those TV shows where they flip the houses.
Yeah,
And if, as you guys, if you've watched those, they don't talk about carrying costs and they don't talk about appreciation.
mhm.
You
No,
know, a lot of these homes that they buy and they keep for 6 months and flip,
right,
they could have just held them for 6 months and made $100,000 and done nothing because the market's going up, you know.
yeah,
That doesn't happen when the market's flat or going down.
right,
That, you know, these TV shows are gonna be a thing of the past because you can't show those profits.
yeah, but the thing about my next door, I'm the one who feeding the person who lived there. He himself by himself, and he have just the caretaker to come and look, and so I feed him most of the time. And then the son, the children never show up.
Did he pass? Did he?
He already passed away, yeah. But anyway, after he passed away, all the
They just
children came.
want- Yeah, they just want,
Want to sell
yeah,
fast.
yeah.
We talked to them. I know one of his children is a contractor. So, and then the flipper, we talked to them too, say how much you sell it for.
Yeah, yeah, you know, since I'm older now, I'm experiencing that with a lot of my clients where a lot of times when you're dealing with the heirs, you know, the $100,000 because it's split 3, 4, 5 ways,
Mhm.
they don't care. It's
Yeah,
like selling,
yeah,
you know, it's sad. I mean, the example I always give is that I had this doctor in the Ladera Heights area.
mhm,
They bought like 50 years ago, and it's like one of the most beautiful homes over there. This is a few years ago. And the house was about 1.2 at the time. It's probably 2 million now, but
yeah,
back then. So he was a doctor, he died, and I knew the family who were my age, the kids were my age. And we went in there, you know, everybody was raised there, and it was a beautiful home and all that stuff. And, you know, we put it on the market, and they do an estate sale. All of his, I mean, this is a doctor, he had a grand piano, he had artwork,
mhm,
very nice artwork. His whole life's collection of stuffs, and the estate sale company person, they did a great job, but they get 50% of what,
mhm.
and that's typical, because they have to market it and, you know, they have to price all this stuff out.
Right,
And it was a sale for a few days. So I think they made, I think it was a little over $100,000 in gross sales, but they only got half of that. So it was like $50,000. And, you know, because I'm thinking of myself, all the stuff that we're saving, our kids can care less about it, and there's no value really to it. So so when we get ready to negotiate, an offer comes in at like $1,150,000. And I'm saying, oh, you know, this is a beautiful home. It's dated, it needs some upgrading, but you know, you can probably get the main, oh no, we're good. So they agreed to take the offer. They didn't want to counter or anything. And I'm just thinking that $50,000 that they gave away was basically this whole estate was what they got, the 50,000 from the person. So it's like, you know, they'll negotiate it away in a second on the sale. So it's nice having those clients because they're not after every dime. They don't really care, but it's kind of sad. And it made me, this was a few years ago, made me go home and start throwing crap out, cleaning my attic out and everything.
Me too, before all the houses gone up, we have a hot as a spring house. We use it just for vacation. And we have pool, 3-bedroom, good size lot and everything, furniture.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
we asking, like, at first my husband was want to ask 250. I said, well, that's too low because we're gonna keep all the furniture. We have 3-bedroom, it's king size, and just remodel everything, the kitchen, the bathroom. So anyway, this lady bought it, they offer us at $390. So we let it go, but right after that, her escrow closed, but she did do a B&B. So all the neighbor that know us, they just call us, you sold this house and these people have party every day. So, so what can I do? I don't know what to do about that. Right? So anyway, the house was going up. Now you can get that house 550. I can get 550 for that.
From the Palm Springs house?
Yes.
Instead of 390?
Yeah, hot that's a spring. That's
Yeah.
where we have the property, and I said, oh my God, we should have waited a little bit. Well, that's how
Yeah.
it go, right? Most of the time.
Yeah, that's all real estate though. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody gave me this line years ago. And depending on your client and the market and what's going on, ask them, are you willing to risk what you got going here for another 30 days for what's going on? Just put it in terms of a buyer or seller. Hey, you want to risk losing this buyer
Mhm.
for $10,000?
Yeah.
And Keith, exactly what we were taught, like if you have an offer on the table for $1,150,000 and you have it listed for 1.2,
Mhm.
and even though you might be able to get it, what we were taught to tell that seller is, are you willing to pay $1,150,000 for this house right now? Because if you reject this offer,
That's what you're doing.
that's what you're doing. You're paying $1,150,000. Do you want to pay that much for this house, or do you want to sell it?
And the flip side of the coin is, if you're working with a buyer, are you willing to risk this and go out and have to pay another $50,000 for the house that you're gonna have to get into another comparable house?
Right.
So it works on both
Oh,
sides.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's fine.
Kind of think,
Yeah.
think ahead.
Right. Yeah. But I don't know. I haven't do any sale for quite some time now.
All right, well,
Welcome to the club. Well, I
Yeah,
just closed one.
let's get active. Any other questions on those forms?
You were mentioning something about escrow, about how don't do anything outside of escrow,
Oh.
or back in the day, you.
Yeah, oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, so back when all the banks went under, I think that was in 89 or 90, somewhere around there in the 80s. We used to, back in the 70s, when I started, I'm old.
So I might.
we used to do a lot of
I'm
creative.
not.
We used to do a lot of creative financing where we would negotiate payments, where the owners would carry paper, the buyer would take over an existing loan, even though it was in their name. Back then, this is before computers, they didn't have the due on sale clauses that everything has now. And interest rates went from 12 to 20%. And so we did a lot of creative financing and a lot of seller carryback. And then they got to the point where all of the lenders put these due on sale clauses because they wanted to see the new buyer. Nowadays, a new buyer can take over that old loan, but they basically have to be pre-approved, they have to pay points, the interest rates can change. So it's basically getting a new loan. So there's really no advantage to doing it. But in the old days, we would wrap these old loans together. And so it was good because it taught us a lot. But
Short sales.
what came of that is that lenders now are very strict on their paperwork, and all of the big real estate lenders, they pool their money, and they sell the paper. So all the loans, when you have a buyer and they get a $1 million real estate loan at Bank of America, they don't go to the Torrance branch. All of those loans are pooled together and they sell these multi-million-dollar packages of all these loans on the secondary mortgage market. And that's where investors put in money to get a return. And all of these loans are packaged on the secondary money market. But it's all federally regulated and it's all federally controlled. And anytime that somebody lies on their bank statement, it's a felony. You can be prosecuted as a felony by the FBI because it's lender fraud. And I actually had, I don't remember Kim Bell. He's my cousin's husband, but we kind of grew up together as adults. He became a Remax broker up in the Sacramento area. This was back in the 80s. And especially after the banks had all these problems, the investigators were much more stringent in looking at all of these loans just to make sure that there wasn't any fraud committed. And so Ken had, I think he had about 50 agents. He didn't have a lot of agents. But one of his agents was getting a real estate loan, and he checked that he was an employee rather than an independent contractor. Oh boy. Because technically under the Department of Real Estate, we're employees, but we're signed as independent contractors, right? The buyer, he bought the house, never missed a payment or anything, but the FBI through the banking industry was doing these spot checks and found that, oh, John over here got a loan working from Remax and he's an employee. So they go in, this is the FBI going into Ken Bell, my relative, as the broker, and asking him, hey, is this guy an employee or is he an independent contractor? So when you got the FBI knocking on the door, you're not going to lie to him, right? So he said, oh, no, I made a mistake. It's, he's an independent contractor, even though, so he was convicted of a felony. He lost his broker's license. Ken was.
Wow.
Yeah. Cost him, this is 30, 40 years ago. Cost him $50,000 in attorney fees. And that was back then. Now it's over $100,000 just in attorney fees. Lose your license. He got his license back in 2 years. They were able to expunge it and everything, and he paid for his sins. But that's how serious it is, especially as a professional. Since we're in a business, they're typically not going to go after the consumer if they, fudge something, even though they can. But as a professional, you don't want to be involved in doing anything outside of escrow that can be construed as lender fraud because it's investigated by the FBI and their pockets are a lot deeper.
Yeah, because I think I heard that before all the loan people are kind of crooked.
I was very shocked on my side. The listing agent was the one that suggested that I have my buyer still say that she's doing an owner occupied loan, even though she is doing the rent back. She was the one that's like, oh, I have multiple people doing it and it goes through, and she's suggesting to me, and I was like, interesting. So that's when I reached out to you.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. And that's the way a lot of agents just don't know. They don't realize the risk that they're taking, and it's not worth it. It's just not. And there are lenders out there that you can explain the situation. It makes sense that they're buying the home, but the seller needs a few extra months, and they'll agree with it. So it all gets back to selling that paper on that secondary market because it's owner occupied. Right.
Yeah, so we told our client's lender that there's going to be a rent back 6 months. So what rate you give us, if it's higher or lower, or keeping the same, that's on you. We disclosed everything. So yeah.
I just told your story about the how we took your offer from having the 3 conditions to 17 days, and we rewrote it to just a 7-day inspection condition.
Very helpful, and we decided we were working the numbers, if we didn't present it, and I told her, I'll let you know if we change any updates.
Yeah.
We're just gonna hold off. There's no rush. We're just.
Yeah, and that's fine. And we don't know what this market's going to do.
But I appreciate all your help. You were really amazing.
Yeah,
You're so helpful.
But that's what we have to do in this, even in today's market, when you have a buyer that's got a large down payment and they're well qualified, you don't need to put those contingencies in. Just put the inspection contingency in, and your offer will look much better. Okay, anything else that you want to go over? So I've got this home buyer's booklet. We're gonna just kind of breeze through it. I would rather focus on questions that you have or any issues that you have in working with buyers and cover them. This is all of the courses that I teach are basically from my college teaching, and they're like 3-hour lectures. And you guys don't want to be in here until dinner time, so I can just breeze through it and just 20 minutes or so, but I would rather be specific to your current concerns if there's something that you're working with. Questions? Anything else? You're in escrow, right? You got yours accepted?
Yes, it's in
and-
escrow right now.
Okay, so you're just waiting for paperwork from the seller?
Yeah, and then I'm doing my inspection with James this Saturday, so we'll
Okay.
get that knocked off also.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the title report back and I questioned the title company because there was basically I found like this legal description of an easement and it didn't make sense to me because it's talking about other properties in the planned development. So I went back to title for a clarification. So is it good to advise my client not to send back the whole signature until we get clarification on what the title, the easement's referring to and how it affects her?
It really doesn't matter until you sign that contingency removal.
Mhm.
So you can sign all the paperwork you want now, you just don't want to sign that you're removing that contingency.
Mhm.
So it's okay to sign the paperwork, definitely get an answer. If you can't get an answer, come the 17 days or whatever the time frame is,
Mhm.
then you ask for an extension, say, hey, I need more time on this.
Okay.
I thought it was
So-
flooded.
Typically, the easements on a preliminary title report are, they're typically not of a lot of importance,
Mhm.
generally speaking. Because what we deal with around here are homes that have been around for 50+ years, they've been sold multiple times. And those types, if there's been an issue, it's usually been taken care of in the past. So it's not like we're buying new homes that's built in this farmland out in the Riverside area or something. Yeah. So where you gotta be concerned whether there were oil derricks or wells and sewers and all that stuff. So, these are all resales, so typically we don't have to worry about it.
Mhm.
The things that I've noticed specifically on those preliminary title reports are easements like on the back of the lot. But if you remember from your real estate exam, they're called gross easements, that when that tract was built, they have these easements going across the backs of all the lots for the utilities to come in or to put lines in overhead.
Mhm.
Sometimes water, power, gas, whatever, they have these easements. And that can play a concern if the buyers are planning to build or put a pool or do that type of stuff.
Gotcha.
Because that could impact the building back directly to that property line in the back of the house.
Mhm.
Most of the setbacks, though, will cover whatever those easements are. So
Okay.
what was your specific easement that they were concerned with, or that you were concerned with?
It's a lot of legal jargon. Basically, it talks about a lot about, I think, minerals and gas and oil and stuff like that. I think it's drilling and all that stuff out in Huntington Beach. But the reason why I went to title was because they told me it was up here, the easement, but my client's property is down here. So I'm like, why did they include it in their title report, even though it's so far away from her property?
And that's.
Yeah, that's why I
and
asked
that's-
them.
And that's where you go when you have questions or your client has questions on that prelim report, is you find out who the title officer is and call them. Robert is our title rep from California Best. He knows nothing. I mean, I don't say nothing, but he knows very little about title. He is a rep that goes around to help the agents. He doesn't know title. The guy's name is Mountain, Mr. Mountain. Mountain. Been around forever. He's traveled with him over the different companies. And so that's why I call whenever I have a title question, or if there's a deed or something they're not sure.
Mhm.
And that's his business, and he knows it. So.
Gotcha. But if we're using, the seller shows the title company out in Huntington Beach, I'll have to just refer back to those reps and those officers.
Correct. So find out who the title officer is from the rep
Mhm.
and have the client call. Again, you don't want to ever be the middle person. You can do it on a joint call, a conference call where you're both talking to them,
Mhm.
but don't you take care of it and then pass it on to the other agent, because that's where the interpretation made,
Mistakes happen.
yeah, mistakes. You know, in the old days, I used to go down and get permits, you know, on a house. So they say, oh, yeah, you know, this is permitted 20 years ago. And I would go down and stand in line and get the permit for my clients and give them to them. Now, you know, all the attorneys say, no, you just can't do that. You can go with your client, or you can send your client down to get permits, but you don't want to be the middle person. And once the permits come, you don't want to explain the permits, just like that preliminary title report. You don't want to explain that to your client, because that's not our job, and we're not title officers. So you give them the information to call such and such if you have any concerns.
Got
And
it.
that goes, you know, termite, chimneys, foundations. You know,
Yeah.
we try to do everything because we are the ringleader in the transaction, and you know, most agents want to take that extra leap and do as much as they can for their clients, but you just got to be careful. The attorneys want us to be focused and just do our job. Don't write anything on the contracts. You know, you still see that on counteroffers where they've listed a dozen items. But, you know, we're not attorneys, we can't practice law, so always use the zip forms, disclosures, and let, just like that lease agreement. I think you had a lease, a rent back or something.
Yes.
Instead of saying that, you know, parties agree to a rent back of, you know, such and such days or whatever, say parties agree to the attached rental addendum. And zip forms has a couple different addendums, one that's 30 days or less, or one that's more than 30 days, and get them to go through that so that we are not practicing law. So, you know, we used to say, it's subject to a 1031 exchange at no cost to the buyer, no cost to the seller. We used to write that all the time on there. Now you check the box, you know, see the intent to exchange supplement that's attached.
Okay.
So that should be a red flag anytime you start having to write, or when you start thinking, oh gee, what should I say? And
Not your, not your.
it's not our job, and we can be liable for what we say. Okay, other questions? Anything in particular about working with buyers that you have questions about, or you'd like me to focus on or talk about?
I'm currently working with, well, you know, the buyers that I'm working with, we've been putting several, well, 3 offers for, unfortunately, one that is tenant occupied, and they put it on the market with the tenant, but the tenant is not showing signs of going out. Yes. So they took it out of the market, and my client is really into that unit. Or at least something, I'm just begging God that some other unit comes out in that, you know, building. As a matter of fact, I just had an idea for that. I think I'm gonna door knock that unit myself.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you cannot do anything, and the buyers don't understand that with the moratorium, you really cannot do anything. I finally had to tell her, you know, the moratorium is gonna go for sure until next year. It could go up until 2024. You wanna get it like that? You know, that's the whole thing. And she's just wearing me down, she has up to $375,000, or she has up to 400,000. She wants to spend 375,000 for a condo 3 blocks away from the beach, on Long Beach. And I did find her a couple of things, but they don't come free. Everything has an issue.
Yeah, and you certainly don't want a first-time buyer like that needs to occupy the property to get tied up with a tenant. That's because you're gonna have problems with their lender and getting that loan. So there's all kinds of problems. Jamie in our office, our appraiser, he purchased a listing that we had in Hawthorne. It was a 2-unit, a 3-unit. 2 of the units were vacant, but the house in front had a tenant that was, this is in the middle of COVID, that was not paying rent, didn't want to move. We offered $10,000 of cash for keys, and she laughed. She says, I wouldn't move for $20,000. You know, and it just makes you sick about the system, the way it is and how they're working.
Yeah, because they don't, you can't evict them.
We can't do anything.
You can't take them
When
to
the
court.
time's up, though, they still owe that rent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But you have to go after them too.
yeah, a Hawthorne tenant that's paying $700 a month rent, and they're gonna owe $20,000. Then, yeah, that's silly. It's gonna cost you more money for the attorney than you'll ever see.
Then, yeah.
It just doesn't work. You don't have problems like that if you got beach properties that are in nice areas, but, you know, this is Hawthorne. They're only paying 700. When they did pay, it was only $700 for a 2-bedroom house over there.
yeah.
Because the landlord was so nice to him. I'd known the owner for decades, and the tenant had been there forever. And anyway, so when we ended up selling it, so when you have your other hat on and you're trying to sell a property like this, you got to make sure you disclose that and say, hey, we've got 2 that are vacant, right? But you have to take on these problems with this tenant in the front, right? Which means you may not be able to get any rent for months. You may have all these other expenses, et cetera, et cetera. But there's investors out there, especially, this is about a year ago, the market was so hot. And so we were able to, Jamie actually had an investor. I keep forgetting to ask him if those tenants ever moved in.
Yeah, because they were getting it at 2%. So of
Right.
course, I mean, get it,
Yeah,
you know, and if they have the money and if there's one of the units that is empty,
yeah,
at least they're gonna.
yeah. And this had potential for,
Yeah.
getting a lot more rent also. Okay, so let me kind of go through some of the stuff that we have, and please stop me if you have questions. I do have a handout. Let's see.
I only have one more question.
Sure.
There, if, you know, like in this case, my client was telling me, why don't I offer cash for keys? And I said, because you're not the seller. And she said, well, why don't we offer them $5,000 so this guy can get out? We cannot do that, right? As buyers.
CAR has a paper written on that, cash for keys. Technically, it came out, this is about halfway through COVID, that no one can offer cash for keys because it's duress. And it's a threat to the tenant that you're harassing them. We did it, but I'm reading this paper and it's like, I can see that side of it, that, but they're still living there, not paying any rent,
Wow.
and they can avoid having to make back payments, right? If they take the cash for keys, it avoids a lot of stuff. But this article from the CAR attorney is saying that we can't, that neither the seller nor the buyer should be offering cash for keys. In other words, we just kind of sit and wait for them to move, type of thing. So it's just, that's.
So it's more of the person that has the relationship with the tenant.
Well, if
That's
somebody
in between
does,
them. Yeah.
yeah, I can talk to them. Okay, so we got a lot of information on buyers booklets. I'm just gonna kind of give you an overview of some of the things that we do. I look at buyers like I do sellers, right? When you sit down, because we're all familiar, when you go to take a listing, you do a market analysis, you tell them the value of the property, you tell them how great you are, you tell them all the things that you're gonna do to sell their property, sign the listing, right? Well, if you think the same way in dealing with the buyer, that's what we should be doing with the buyer. It's just like the seller. You go through that same process. Again, in the old days, you'd put the buyers in the car and you drive them around and show them properties, and sometimes you never even saw them again. Because they would go to the next, it was like shopping for cars. They'd go to the next website office and they'd look, right? So nowadays you want to treat that buyer just like you do a seller. And so that's a series of steps that you go through. And depending on your marketing plans and how you prospect, I did open houses. So my goal was to get one good buyer a week. from my 3 to 4 open houses. And so you've got to have a system in place to move these buyers along, because you don't want to be spinning your wheels on a buyer that's not going to give the lender paperwork, on income or whatever it is. And so the first thing you do, you got to know what to tell these potential buyers. And the first thing I always do is I say, let me explain how I work. That was my key. Let me explain how I work. And this is whether you meet somebody on an open house that's interested, or you get a referral from a friend, or a phone call on a sign, or however you get these buyers. Let me explain how I work. And then I go through the steps. And you should have this. One of the books upstairs in our lending library is the 20 questions that you need to know. And there's I can't think of more than a handful, but there's, in our industry, there's only about 20 different things that you get asked. And so you should have a canned response so that you know what to say. And on commissions, on how there's lots of questions. But for these buyers, my response is, let me explain how I work. And I come back and then I say, first, we need to get you pre-approved. My lender, Jonathan, I can have him call you tonight or tomorrow, get some information on the phone. Takes a day or two to get you pre-approved. With the loans today, you may find that you can qualify for more than what you thought. Try to get them excited about going through this process. So that's number one, is you got to do that pre-approval. I'll tell you that you don't want to take them out showing them properties or anything until you have that, because you're just wasting your time. Jonathan, he's got this email campaign that he sends to them and says, hey, this is what I need. He's got a list of stuff that he sends. And you guys know that if you're really excited about buying a property, right, you're going to get all that information, or you're already going to have your tax returns. You're going to have everything ready to go, right? If the buyer's kind of wishy-washy, it could take weeks to get that information. It could take weeks before Jonathan gets that information. Well, those are the buyers that you're not going to have time with, because you're getting,
The market.
hopefully, well, everything changes. I mean, yeah, interest rates, loans, everything changes. You want those buyers that are ready to go. And so this is where your prospecting comes in, where you've got to have this stream of these clients coming in. So send them to Jonathan. Jonathan will give you a weekly report on the clients that he has working with, like, oh, this one's really good. They gave me all the paperwork within 3 days, right? This one's never returned my phone calls. So yeah, you're not gonna, you can put them up on an auto email thing, but you're not gonna waste any time. And that happens. I mean, that just happens. So you want the ones that are hot and that respond to Jonathan. When Jonathan has his pre-approval done, then you set a meeting. And that's kind of like a meeting of the minds, where you come in, and this is, if the analogy is like working a seller on a listing, this is where you sit down with that seller. Well, we're sitting down with the buyer and Jonathan. Jonathan will always have some paperwork to sign, about getting the, typically he's already got the credit report, but to get the verification of funds from the bank, because everything has to be documented, just like the old days. So he'll have stuff to get signed, and this is where you'll sit down and you will have them sign your agency agreement and your buyer representation agreement. Right? And that's in this home buyer booklet. So those are the only 2 pages that you have to have signed: the buyer representation agreement and the agency agreement. And then you go through on page 3 of this, just like you do for the seller. The seller, you go through that, all the things I'm going to do for you. I'm going to put a for sale sign up, a lockbox, we're going to hold open house. Well, we've got a personal service agreement, just like for the buyer, right? These are all the things we're going to do. We're going to search the MLS. We're going to search for sell by owners. We're going to give you emails on a daily basis on all new properties that come up. We're going to get the best loan available, blah, 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 blah. So, you just got to educate them as to this process. This is a whole lot different than when we started, where you just throw them in the car and take them out and look at properties. So you educate them on that. And then you give them, Jonathan will give the buyers an estimated closing statement as to what their closing costs will be. They'll get a chance to talk about that as to what their costs are. Because if they're limited like FHA, they've got 3.5% down, well, it's going to be another 2% in closing costs. So I mean, that's a lot of money for a first time buyer. So you got to go through that. They're going to sign Jonathan's uniform commercial loan application. I think it's like 7-8 pages now. And there's a copy. This is online, by the way, on our website, the buyer booklet. And so basically you kind of go through this booklet. I've got about maybe 6 or 7 forms in the back that are the zip forms. But the important one is the purchase agreement, since it's 16 pages now, right? You give this to the buyer. This is real important in this booklet, and say, and you can say your broker, my broker sold it when he started in the business, it was 1 page, that purchase agreement, and now it's 16 pages. Can you believe that? And so I'm going to give you a copy, Mr. Buyer, of the purchase agreement. So when we find that house, this is the paperwork that we're going to have to fill out. And so you give them this in advance, right, so that they can look at it. And there's a couple other disclosures.
So the one you have, this one, is it the latest one?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
as
so
in
because
June.
I used to have one, but it's very long time.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah, and I'll show you how you can make this up. And I just have sample. You can print them with the sample across it. You can use the ones that we have actually filled in, but this works, just makes it easy. And so you just kind of talk about the form. Now, we all know the buyers are going to take this home and they're going to set it down, just like a seller does, right? Because they're saying, oh boy, Derf says that I can get 1.2 million for my house. I'm so excited. All of a sudden, they're never going to look at that booklet again. These buyers are never going to look at this booklet again, right? Because you've just kind of gone through it with them. But what happens is this amazing thing that when you find the house a week later or a month later or a year later, right? They're going to say, oh yeah, Derf gave me this form, right? And they're going to say, where do I sign? Right? And they just go through it, and they've got that confidence that you're not trying to sneak anything in, because they've had this for all this time. I've never had a client call me up. I always use that FERPTA. What does FERPTA? What is that form for? Or, why are they asking this on page 12 of the purchase agreement? I've never had anybody call me that, but it really makes a difference when you go to get your paperwork signed. I can sit down with my clients, whether it's because I have this with the buyers and sellers. I have these. You all have it available online in the booklets, and that when I sit down with a seller or a buyer, it's 15 minutes to 30 minutes max to go through a stack of disclosures. I mean, it's amazing how quickly they don't read it, but they've all had the opportunity to look at these forms during the listing period or during the buying period.
Takes even less time when you hit use Lisa.
There you go. There you go.
And
Yeah,
and just backing up, when you said 1 page, that included the disclosures.
Yeah, that's right. And it was only half filled out. Only half, the 1 page purchase agreement, there was only typing on about half the page. The rest you just kind of wrote in.
who you say who give you that?
We have copies.
It was a friend of mine who died just a few years ago at the age of 101 or 100. She just turned 100.
Wow.
And the first house she bought was on a sheet of paper
Like that.
like this.
Uh-huh.
He's got a copy of it.
When we go through the zip forms, I do bring that out.
In Redondo Beach, I think she paid for it 1,500 or something like that for it.
Well, when I was
Wow.
first in real estate, back then CAR wasn't big as it is now for the attorneys, and we didn't all have standard forms. So most big companies, we were big. My brother, my dad started Fredericks Realty. We had 5 offices, so we were like a big company. So we had a company attorney, and he told all the managers that, oh, we've got to go to 2 pages for a purchase agreement. And all the managers says, oh, no, we can't
work.
yeah, we can't do that, And so he worded it so that when you sign in bold, it says, I've read the back page. And so on the back page, you had all the fine print. So it was 2 pages, but you really just had to sign the one.
And they were legal size at that time too.
Yeah, yeah.
It went to legal size.
And I always get a kick in the forms class, I bring out that card, and when you go in to buy a car and you have this form, I don't know where they get the paper that long, but it's printed on both sides, you know, it's like, nobody reads that stuff. But we don't want to be the car salesman because we want to give them this paperwork in advance, we want to make everything warm and fuzzy. They have the opportunity to look at it and to review everything, whether it's a buyer or seller. I have a home buyer booklet, I have a seller's booklet. Plus, I have 5 other buyer booklets and seller booklets. They're all online. They're written by Hobbs Herder, and they're about different topics about, oh, you know, buying in a changing market, or buying a condo, or what sellers should know about advertising. And they're very, very well written. If you're using these booklets, all you have to do is print out the top page with your personal information. And then I attach your resume, your agent profile in the back page, and you can bind it here in the office. And if you make a stack of those, every time you're going out to meet a buyer or a seller, you should give them a new booklet, right? Because they all say, the new ones all say $99 up here at the top. So it looks like they're getting something of value when they're meeting with you. Yeah, so you know, use that. And then the question on this booklet. So this is online and it's all in a Word. These are all Word docs that you can edit. So the idea is, you know, you got to spend, if you're like my son, you can probably do it all in an hour. If you're like me, it would probably take a day
Me, take a few
to
days.
personalize all these. But once you do it, you just do it one time. And then you have the booklets, and you can either print up, you know, 6 or 7 of them, or have it to where you can email out in a PDF to the clients. But you know, the idea is you get this set up, and that every time you meet with them, you give them some new information, and you become very, very professional. Now, having said all of that, there's lots of times when I'll get a referral, and you know, such and such is. They want to look for a condo down at the beach or something. They saw this one down there, and you know, can you go show it to them and check it out? I mean, that's typical in our industry. And even though I tell you never to do that, I mean, I go do it. And I just figure, hey, I'm wasting this afternoon to meet with the client. We're going to go look at the property. Even if they want it, they can't buy it, right? Because they don't have the pre-approval letters, and in this
Yeah.
market, you know, it's going to take 3 or 4 days. The property's going to be sold. They don't know that, right? So I just consider it as a waste of time for me to introduce myself to the client. So you've got to make that decision as to how busy you are, whether you even want to do that or not. But most of our agents are working with referrals, and they don't do the sit down and everything that I teach. They just go through the transaction and hope that everything closes. So do as I say, not as I do, I guess. Or at least you're going out there knowing that, hey, you know, you're not going to get, or you may not get anything from it, but you'll make that introduction. You can educate them, you can give them the buyer booklet, get them started on getting that pre-approval so that they can move on down the line.
At least you might work out a referral with. By showing them, say buy through the other person.
Well, they're probably not gonna buy through anybody else because they don't understand
Yeah,
what
they
the
don't know, but
process
if they
is.
do,
Yeah.
it's one way to look at it, like, hey.
Yeah.
Come on,
If it's out of the area, I will refer them to an agent that's local out there. Okay, so we got lots of information. This kind of gives you an idea of the different booklets that we have for the buyers and the sellers. On the
That's
back,
good. I like it.
there's lots of information out there. So we talked about writing the offer, make the offer look as good as possible. Use me, you know, send me your drafts of any paperwork that you want me to check out. I see, I'm a working agent, but what's more important is probably on a daily basis, I see an offer from one of our agents. So over a period of months and years, I've seen hundreds of purchase agreements, especially when this market was really hot. And so I know what's getting accepted out there, and I know what's not. And I know that if you just put 17 days in these things, it ain't gonna get accepted. You know, there's too much competition out there. Buyer, part of this is the buyer profile. CAR has some good papers on this, and I have some samples on the website. And I've got great stories in the past where I've gotten offers accepted from buyers that the sellers liked, that were less money than a developer or somebody else coming in there, because they want to see, you know, a new young family, you know, buying my house where I've raised my family for 30 years. And it's amazing. Now, unfortunately, CAR says not to use these. They call them, the CAR calls these love letters anymore because of all the discrimination rules. So I haven't gotten to that point yet, because I haven't even heard of any lawsuits regarding this. But again, CAR says not to use these, and there are agents out there that will not pass these on to their clients. So the word of advice, if I have a buyer, is you want to focus mainly on the financial strengths if they have it, if they have financial strength. So if they have a really good FICO score, you know, print out a copy of the FICO and attach that, or they got lots of money in the bank, whatever it is that it's positive. You're representing them. You're that buyer's fiduciary. You want to make them look as good as possible. And you kind of want to stay away from the, you know, oh, my 3 kids and my lovely wife want to live in this home, because the investor or
It's the church.
the other, the one the CAR always uses is, it's a family picture like this, and it says, oh, you know, we can just imagine coming down and seeing the Christmas tree on Christmas morning in the living room. And, you know, the CR attorneys are thinking, you've got all these protected classes, you've got religion, you've got the family, all these things that they're violating in this letter. And another buyer might be a single person, right? And if the seller shows more favoritism to this, well, that's discriminatory, and you were part of that. So, word to the wise.
So best practice never to use those like kind of letters.
You know, I'm not to that point yet, because I'm still old fashioned.
Be careful.
Old
keep them
and old.
generic.
And old fashioned. Yeah. I would focus more on the financial strengths, because that is not a protected class, right? Say on how strong they are.
Yeah.
But, you know, a lot of times you may have buyers that don't have a real high FICO score, but they're well qualified. And so then you don't focus on the FICO, but you say, hey, we've got a pre-approval. They'll remove the condition in a week, or, you know, whatever it is. So you focus on that.
I've heard of someone say like, oh, I'll throw in a free year of Netflix, like little things that's kind of like get like the seller to appeal. Like, would that be in a letter, or how do you incorporate that? Like my client was gonna give like, oh, you have a whole year of free sinus infection like exams if you'd like to.
Yeah, you know, I just want the offer to be as strong as possible. That's what I recommend to the buyer. Make the conditions as less as easy to remove as possible. Make it a very clean offer, so that even and go in as high as the buyer can for the price. And if they don't get accepted, then the buyer knows, hey, I've done my best, right? You don't, even in today's market, if you're willing to do $1.2 million, you don't write it for $1.1 million. Write it for the $1.2 million, go for it, and let's hope that you're in the running for it when there's multiple offers. It's different if it's been on the market for a couple of months, then we can play the game differently. But if it's a new on the market, you want to come in as strong as possible, make that offer look as good as you can.
Also,
Questions?
it has worked for me that I give the other agent, the listing agent, the name of the lender. And if they want to talk to the lender, because, one thing is what they see that I send them, and the other one is the lender telling them, yes, I can, I can vouch for these people.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's talk about that, because you mentioned about giving some added incentives,
Yeah,
right? So 6 months ago, when everything was multiple offers, the good agents would have their lender call the listing agent, right? And say, oh, I'm representing Joe, it's one of the 10 offers, he's very strong, we've already got him pre-approved, blah, 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 blah. That's great. So you get these third-party endorsements. Most importantly, and I think we discussed this on yours, is you want to be warm and fuzzy with that listing agent.
Mhm.
If they're nearby, like, within a city or two, and you can go and hand deliver the offer and shake their hand and say, hey, we actually got a face here. That's a real positive. I mean, I'm typically a listing agent, and I like that. And as I'll tell you in my sellers class, when I'm looking at multiple offers, the first thing I've got all these criteria that we're going to look at. Number one on my list is that buyer's agent.
if you can work with them.
Yeah,
If it's
because
gonna-
I'm gonna be in escrow 30, I say I'm gonna be in bed with them 30, 60 days. That's number one. I don't care what the price is. I mean, whether it sells for 100,000 more or less, obviously it makes a difference to the seller, but it doesn't matter to me. Number one is that agent. So that's what you want to focus on, is getting to know that agent, calling them. Elva's really good at it. When she's got a buyer, she calls them every day to get updates and says, hey, I got more information and blah, 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 and here's the lender and all this stuff. So that, because a lot of times that first buyer may beat out her, and they will call her and say, hey, we lost that first one, and she ends up, her buyer's going to get the property a week later because the inspection didn't go, or whatever it is. So you want to make friends as best you can with that listing agent. And I know some listing agents are difficult to deal with, but you've got to break that ice, because that's going to give you the best opportunity. Otherwise, that agent's going to go to somebody in their company or somebody that they know, and they're going to negotiate the price up to where it's market, right? And that's what I do. So that's number one. And then you obviously want to make your terms and everything else as good as possible on that offer. Other incentives, I've heard stories during this COVID where there's multiple offers. They had care packages sent, the buyer had care packages sent to the seller. It's typically the way it works is, everybody presents offers on Monday. The dumb listing agent says, oh, okay, best and final on Friday. And so they're just extending everything, just to get more offers, because 10 offers aren't enough. Now they want 15 offers. And so the buyers will send a care package, and it'll be, I've heard of everything from chocolates with marshmallows, because our kids can't wait to do s'mores on the open fire pit in the back.
Too much.
So
wow.
yeah, so there's lots of stuff going on that to put you to separate you from those other buyers. Want to get too much into working with sellers, but some sellers agents will just counteroffer everybody. You shouldn't do that, because there's people you don't want to work with. There's buyers you don't want to deal with. So you just work with the ones that you want.
This transaction here just closed this week. And one of the things that pushed them over, because we had identical price offered on two different, and there was others that wanted to make an offer on it. And I said, I think we're okay. And one of the things that tipped them over was this letter, plus they knew the owners 2 doors down. And I know I have a relationship with all these people. We go to my church, and the one person that's in between the two, he called me and recommended them.
So the neighbor referred the buyer to the seller and says, hey, you should consider them.
Yes,
Ah.
which I thought was quite effective, and I passed it on to the sellers. I said, they know I
The
forget what their
buyer,
name.
yeah.
Yeah,
The
just
buyers know your neighbors.
Just hope that that other offer wasn't a single person. Put in the same dollar amount, but because that's what we gotta be concerned with.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's good. And I think these love letters are important. Try to make them more financial and not part of the.
And just
protected
personal
classes.
relationships too between people helps too.
Yes, and that's something that we can work on. That relationship between the two agents is again, that's paramount in my book. So,
Works for me.
yeah.
What I also do, and you've seen my offers, what I do is that I write an email to the listing agent. And it has helped me a lot because then I tell him everything that they like. I stay away from who my clients are, but I concentrate on what the house is or what the property is about. So you just say, the bathroom is amazing, when they saw the things that, anything that is a fact, that is just a fact that stays away from who they are. And you try to be as warm as possible with the agent. You said something about even giving the offer to them in hand, and I have not done that,
Oh, yeah,
but I'm going to start doing
Oh,
that
yeah,
because
I
I
would-
think that's really good.
yeah, because they get to meet you.
Yes. And they see your disposition.
I mean, if you're ugly like me and Keith over here, you may not want to do that.
Speak for
but,
yourself.
Yeah, but if you have that opportunity, it's just like knowing them, you
I
get a
think it's
step up when you.
wonderful,
when you
yeah.
know that. Okay, other questions on this? Anything else that you want to go in specifically? You know that you got to do the source of funds and the pre-approval and everything when you send that package to the buyers. Make sure that that you got all your paperwork done. In one of the booklets, it states that most buyers take about 18 months to buy a house, whereas most sellers, it's about 12 months. From the time that they first think about selling to when they sell, it's less than a year, but a buyer is typically a year and a half, where they're thinking about buying a house and then they may go look at something. It's a long process, and most buyers typically lose one or two properties before they get serious because they think that they can negotiate or they can do, stuff that they can't in this marketplace. So,
Could that be different for first time buyers as opposed to,
well,
I think the time frame might be different.
yeah. So I'll tell you a story about. I'll end here with a couple of stories if you don't have any questions. So my middle son Billy, buying his first condo, this is about 10 years ago. He was buying with his college roommate. He couldn't afford it, anything his own, but he could buy half of a condo. So the two of them went together. I think we wrote 10 offers. This is back when there were short sales going on, because it's FHA. It's like the minimum down payment. We don't know if they're going to qualify or not, so you got to have that protection in to make sure that something doesn't show up that we're not aware of. And so we're writing these full price offers, but it still has all these contingencies in there. And so we can't compete with an investor or somebody that's got a large down payment, or all cash or anything. And so we got beat out about 10 times. And so finally we got, who was doing all those short sales? Rob from Remax. It was one in the San Pedro off of First and the big apartment complex that were converted to condos back in the 80s or 90s or something. And they're nice. They're like big 2-bedroom apartments, but they're condos. And I think at the time they were like 150, 160,000. They're like 350 now. So finally, there was multiples. There's like 4 of them that were for sale in there, and he was having a hard time selling his. We gave him a full price offer, and they accepted it. So they were real excited. They got in on that. The other, and that was just the start. They both kept it for 2 years. They sold it. Vishal was was my son Billy's friend. He just got married last week. He kept it and had his mom move in to it. My son bought his first house in San Pedro, which was like $250,000 at the time, the cheapest house in San Pedro. They sold that about 2 years ago. He's married now, he's got a couple of kids, and they just bought a house in South Torrance. So in a period of less than 10 years, they've really done well. And you can't save that kind of money, but it's probably $400,000 or $500,000 that they've made in these different real estate transactions. I'll tell you one other story about my youngest son, Charlie. He was renting in North Torrance, and he was paying $1,100 rent. And what I did for my nephew Tim, because he couldn't afford, and they can't afford to buy houses nowadays. My nephew ended up buying a 3-unit in Torrance. He had a young kid, went to Torrance schools, and they lived in the 1-bedroom unit, and they rented out the 2 2-bedroom units because he could afford the $1,500, which was what the payment was for that, because the rent offset the income on this. Back then it was like $1 million now, but back then they were like 500,000. So, I mean, there's ways to get started in real estate. That's a whole class that I teach. My youngest Charlie was paying $1,100, and we found a tenant that was trying to buy their house and had a little guest house. The tenant couldn't afford it. She was my age and never owned any real estate, but she could buy half of it. So Charlie bought half and she bought half, and they've only been there for maybe 3 years, and it's gone up $200,000. So you just got to get in. You got to get in. So
My first office meeting with Fredericks Realty, Fred said, now 43 years ago, $1 million was a lot more than $1 million today. He said, if you want to be a millionaire in 30 years, buy $1 million worth of real estate and have the tenants pay their mortgage.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I'd have done that.
pretty simple. Yeah.
I don't remember anything else in that meeting, but I remember that. I thought, wow. how
Yeah,
can I do that?
he wrote a good letters. It was retire on $8,000 a month income, and this is 40 years ago.
Yeah,
Oh, that was nice.
40 years, and it was
40 years
basically
ago.
that you're buying these apartments to get paid off, and now you get the rents.
yeah.
And back then, 8,000, the rents now would be a whole lot more than that. But it's simple, but you got to do it. And then the last story is I'll tell you a story about working with buyers and what it was like at the Fredericks Realty days. We did caravans every Friday. This is before computers, and so we didn't have the luxury of seeing all these properties, videos and pictures and everything. And so every Friday, you had to go out and look at properties. And so we'd have our office meetings, and offices back then had a territory because they didn't have computers. And so if you wanted, like Palm Springs, you're gonna buy a house in Palm Springs, you went out there to the area and you found a real estate company near where you wanted to buy. If you wanted to buy in West Torrance, you'd find a real estate office there. Our office was in Gardena, it's actually North Torrance, which is the one that I managed. I owned that for a while. So you would go to those different offices, and everybody was full-time. My brother had these ads he put in the paper for real estate agents, real estate salesmen. That's how sexist that is. The world has changed, right? Had they just known that women always did better in real estate, before the time.
Sorry, girls.
So we go on this caravan, and it's only a few blocks off of Van Ness from the office. And there was this really nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath, typical tract house. It's vacant. They'd gone in and put in new carpet, new paint, looked really nice. And the market right then was about $100,000 for these houses. This is in the 70s. So we're looking at this and going, wow, and it's $95,000, $95,000, and the market's about 100. I go, wow, this is really nice. So I filed that back in my active listings. And about a week later, somebody comes walking in the door. We actually had floor time where you would, take people that came in the door. And it was this older couple. They were like 30, in their 30s. And they were looking for their first house. And for about $100,000, right? Light bulb goes
I
on,
know where to take you.
right? Hop in the car. There's this new listing. It's just a few blocks away. You're gonna love this house. It's really nice. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, right? And I'm all excited because I know this is the nicest property out there. Take them out to the house, have them go through it. They look all through the house. Guess what they said? Guess what
They
these
didn't like
buyers
it.
said?
Got an agent.
No. They said, oh, this is really nice. What else do you have? Right? It's not like they're buying a car or anything. And I learned a lot from this. I was in my early 20s at the time. I knew that this was a great deal because I saw the other 50 dogs that were out there that were 100,000 that needed work and everything, right? And so when I saw this, I was really excited. They saw this and it's like, oh, this is nice. What else do you have? Because there's all these homes for sale, right? And it dawned on me that, oh, gee, and so then I spent the next 2 weeks educating them, showing them
$12.
that home was sold, and it's never gonna be on the market for $100,000 again in our lives, right? So that's why all these trainers tell you that when you're looking at buyers, when you're working with buyers, you need to educate them and bring them up to your speed. And nowadays it's easier because they can see it on realtor.com, they can see it on all these emails, they know when there's a good deal out there because they can see all the pictures of comfort of their home, but flash forward a few years, I had a military couple that he was very specific. They wanted $150,000 condo. In the Lawndale area was okay, Lawndale Hawthorne, because they wanted to be close to the base. And that was the price range, so they could get a nice condo. So I go out there and I spend a day and I got all the printouts and everything. And so I'm driving them around, showing them all this. Again, this is before computers. I would do a printout of a market analysis. I actually drove by buildings where they sold and we couldn't go into them. I said, well, there was one here, here's a picture of it. It sold for 150,000 and it was like this. I had 3 properties to show them. And as the trainers tell you, you don't show them the best one first, right? Because you've got to educate them. And so I ended up showing them maybe 6 or 7 homes via drive-bys, but I only went into 3, because that seems to be the magic number, whether it's 3 or 4, something like that. Like on TV, right? There's that one show on TV where the agent shows them 3 and they always pick one.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, that never happens in real life. But it's okay, there's the 3, you pick one and we're gonna buy it, we're gonna go to escrow. Yeah, that never happens. So it happened to me because I educated them on the marketplace. I drove them by all these other ones. I said, hey, this one is really nice. This sold for 150, but it's a apartment style. It's not, it's a little bit bigger. It's not the townhouse. And we've got a couple of townhouses I'm going to show you. The first one I showed them, because I knew what was down the road. I knew what number 3 was. And I showed them number 1. And it was a nice condo, but it had red carpet that was all dirty and it had black painted walls. And I remember one of the things that Tom Hopkins says, he goes, when it's got really nice carpet, you bend down and you look at this carpet. And if they're into you, they're going to bend down and touch the carpet. So it's like the yes things, that salespeople, they get them to say yes, 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 yes. Okay, do you want to sign here? No. So there's all these, tricks that they're upstairs. You might want to look at that stuff. You don't need to. But they're looking at this house and they're saying, wow, this is really nice. We can paint. We can replace the carpet, because back then that was only maybe $1,000. It wasn't a lot of money. And we can make this really nice. And so in my mind, it's like ding, 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 because I know what the next one is. Right. And I know, yeah, that it's going to even be nicer. And if they like this, right, because they've seen all the marketplace. So bottom line, we get to the last house was like a courtyard home, and it just had one wall. That was common to the double car garage. It had back then it was all brown carpeting with the oak handrails. It was a 2-story townhome. I opened the door, they walked in, right? They walked through the kitchen because everything on that, Derf, how do I buy this? I didn't say a word. You know, and so that's the sales technique that you need to do. So I flash back to when I was 20 years old, showing that $100,000 house, and it's like, okay, what else you got? You know, I was like, oh, geez, I played that one. All right, so there's a lot to learn. You got to have those prospects. You got to be able to show lots of properties out there and learn from my mistakes. All right, anything else? Let's go make some money out there, guys. I'm around if you have questions. Thank you. Books are online if you need anything.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, so we have a lending library up there. I have, in fact, Keith probably donated $10,000 worth of seminars and stuff that we've gone to. Some of them have